To be honest, I lasted a lot longer on this than I expected. Hello, friends and enemies. Welcome to Horror and Inconvenience, where things are usually spooky and always weird. It's been a while. Welcome to my new and improved set, which is the same set, but I finally put up all my shelves. What lemon? And welcome to my non-apology for failing to finish Criminally's Read What You Own challenge. Now, you'll probably recall that I was making an attempt not only to complete the bronze challenge of reading 25 books I already owned before buying any more, but that I was also attempting to make a brief review of each book I read for the challenge. And then you will perhaps have noticed that I entirely disappeared for the entire month of December. Listen, I work in retail. I don't remember last month. But I still did intend to finish the Read What You Own challenge until my store had its after Christmas sale, which pretty firmly changed my mind on that subject. But before we get to my challenge fail book haul, let's discuss the books that I did complete for the challenge. I actually got pretty far. I got 17 books into my 25 book challenge. I released short reviews for Wrath, for the manga The Whole World's Gone Yuri Except for Me, for T. Kingfisher's What Moves the Dead, and for Chelsea Manning's readme.txt. Those were my first four. I did have one DNF for this, which was Harvey Pekar's American Splendor, which I had sitting around my room for like 10 years, because I like to keep a collection of, important books from American comics history. And, it was interesting, but I got the idea, and I didn't feel the need to read all of it. I didn't feel that this was really an essential part of my library, so I'm going to get rid of that. So count my challenge as 16 until I do get rid of that, because I said I'd only count DNFs if I actually got rid of them. Then, amidst the blur of December, I finished volumes 1 and 2 of Futaribeya, A Room for Two, which is kind of an early Yuri story about two girls at a boarding school rooming together and basically being married at first sight. It's adorable, charming, funny in places, and just a very relaxing read. I highly recommend it if you need to rest, which I did. Now, this one I can't show because it's currently in a friend's hands. It's one of those books that it's impossible not to lend out as soon as you finish it, but it was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, which is a soothing fantasy book set in a D&D-like world where an orc stops adventuring and decides to open a coffee shop instead. It's delightful, very found family, low stakes, and it's got a small queer love story in it as well. Just absolutely charming. Another one that's a great restful read. Then I finally got around to reading My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I'm so disappointed in myself for waiting so long to read this, but I was in the perfect mood for it when I picked it up, and I enjoyed every moment of it. What a delightful book. The main character is a young woman who's just graduated high school. She's essentially the only Native American kid in her tiny Idaho. I want to say it's an Idaho town. And she is obsessed with slasher movies. and she is convinced that there is a slasher plot occurring in her town. But, of course, nobody believes her. Because, of course, nobody believes her. I bet you can't guess from the cover whether there really is a slasher plot happening. This book was really incredible. I felt a connection to the main character immediately, and, you know, being invested in the one person you hope survives, that really is what a slasher is all about for me. I have trouble watching the really empty slashers where I'm just supposed to enjoy the carnage. I need one character to connect with, and this book gave me that. It gave me a complex story with multiple layers of characterization, but also multiple layers of horror tropes. And its sequel is coming out in February. I cannot wait. I read this as an audiobook, but I finally finished The Man Who Could Move Clouds by Ingrid Rojas Contreras. This is the memoir that I was reading for my National Book Award long list and short list narrow down. The National Book Awards have long since been announced, and I will be completing that project, talking about what I have read for it so far and reading all the winners. That obviously got put to the side because retail in the holiday season is the stuff nightmares are made of, not the fun kind of nightmares. But yeah, I'll be getting back to that and finishing that, because I am curious to see how the winners compare to my original choices. I read Night is a Sharkskin Drum by Haunani-Kay Trask. This is a book of poetry that was recommended to me at Native Books Hawaii when I was there last year, and I'm just now getting around to reading it because I hoard books. Reading books was a completely different hobby than hoarding them. But it was a beautiful book. I like poetry. This is good poetry. I won't pretend to have really the full scope of background to understand everything that's going on, but it is angry, it's anti-colonial, it's feminist, and just a very beautiful book. Definitely worth a read. Tragedy about the cover design, but pick it up anyway. It's worth it. I read volume 1 of Killing Me, which is a romance between a vampire and a vampire hunter. It does exactly what you want it to do. I found it really delightful and funny and wild. I haven't seen anything about when volume 2 is going to be released, but I will be there for it. It was a good time. Best Barbarian by Roger Reeves is another one for the National Book Award Shortlist Project. I really enjoyed this book of poems, and it probably is one I wouldn't have picked up if not for being on the National Book Award shortlist, so I appreciate it. I'll be talking about this more and possibly be rereading it before I do, so we'll see. I finally finished drinking Sapphire Wine by Tanith Lee. This is the follow-up to Don't Bite the Sun, which regular viewers of my channel will recall I absolutely loved. It was my first Tanith Lee book, and while she's more famous for fantasy, especially for dark feminist rewrites of popular fairy tales, I found this 70s sci-fi duology really compelling. It takes place in a utopian series of cities on probably a foreign planet, although there's no particular reason it couldn't be a far, far distant future Earth. The cities are run by robots, and people don't die. When they die, their consciousness is reloaded into a new body, which they can design for themselves, changing sex at will, although the series does unfortunately fall into the binary of sex and gender pretty heavily, and for a concept that is so inherently queer, stays oddly heteronormative. This is definitely in that set of 70s sci-fi that just makes the modern reader go, oh my god, you are so close to getting it. Come on, just one step farther. She was so close. But it does fall short in a lot of ways, for a modern reader, for a queer reader, for what are we on, the fifth wave of feminism now? For a modern reader. Yeah, that said, I thought this series had really compelling characters, and oddly kind of like space cottagecore vibe at parts. Very anti-authoritarian, iconoclastic vibes. I was extremely invested in the unnamed narrator and their companions, both irritating and compelling companions. They're all richly drawn characters, and the whimsical details of this futuristic space world are just so interesting. I do highly recommend these books, as long as a certain amount of gender essentialism and heteronormativity aren't going to be triggering enough to ruin your good time. If they are, skip it for now. But I do highly recommend them. This was a wonderful read. Next, I read a book I'd had sitting around for a long time. I bought it because I read another of this author's books. I happened upon an arc of it that I could grab, and really enjoyed it. And then I bought this book because it's one of her most popular, but the title and the cover kind of suck, so I forgot about it. This is And I Darken by Kiersten White. I was like, well, a lot of people really adore this, and I think her writing is lovely and poetic. And I like the way she draws her female teenage characters as complete and complex people. So I've finally gotten around to reading this, and I am so into it. So I always thought that this was a fantasy series, vaguely attached to vampires, and the reason I thought that was actually because it is a historical fiction trilogy. This is the first in a historical fiction trilogy surrounding Vlad the Impaler. But it is not fantasy. It feels like fantasy, but it isn't. There's no magic in it. It's just really engaging, exciting historical fiction. And it's really historical fan fiction. It's if you take Vlad the Impaler's story and apply Rule 63 to it. Vlad the Impaler's a girl. Her name is Lada, short for Ladislav, and she's everything I want in a YA protagonist. That is to say, spitting mad at all times. I am so glad now that we have books for teenagers that depict what being a teenage girl actually feels like, which is an unending stream of rage. This felt so good to read. The story centers around the childhood and adolescence of Lada and her brother Radu, who you may know from history as Radu the Handsome, Vlad the Impaler's famously hot, famously gay brother. Yeah, they're the two main characters. And they're raised as hostages in the Ottoman court, where they both fall in love with the Sultan's son and heir to the throne. So, you like high stakes, you like political fantasy, you like betrayal, you like messy relationships, you like messy characters, you like stories where no one's right but no one's quite wrong either. You like a surprisingly complex portrayal of the politics of religion in the medieval Ottoman Empire and Eastern Europe. Shockingly, you are all going to get all of that from a book that looks like this, that's called And I Darken. It's really good. Don't sleep on this. It would be easy to skip it, but don't. There's something for you in here if... I mean, What do you want? You want action? There's sword fights. People get murdered. I mean, it's actually a lot of fight scenes in this. Listen, read this book. I don't care what your objection is or who you are. You should read it. Let's bring this back. You know what? Let's give this a TikTok style second wave. Let's get them to sell the movie rights on this. Come on, guys, chop chop. And the final two of my incomplete Read What You Own challenge were Christmassy reads. The Midwinter Witch by Molly Knox Ostertag, which is the third in the Witch Boy series, and it surrounds the main character's extended family having a witchcraft and shape-shifting competition centered around the winter solstice. Delightful. I think I've already said all that really needs to be said about this series, which is that they're nice. You should read them. The characters are sweet. They're good for kids, but they're also good for anybody who wants to root for good characters in an interesting fantasy world. And finally, I reread Holidays on Ice by David Sedaris as an audiobook, which I do every year in the couple of days surrounding Christmas, because I grew up listening to the Santaland Diaries on NPR. Because look at me. Of course I did. And I like it. It's comforting and nostalgic for me. David Sedaris, pretty good. Okay, so that's as far as I got, because the day after Christmas, Barnes & Noble had a 50% off sale on all of our hardcovers. All of them. Now, our employee discount is pretty solid. I have no complaints about the employee discount at Barnes & Noble, but 50% is better than the employee discount. So I couldn't miss it, could I? I just had to So, I am going to walk you through the many beautiful and compelling reasons for my failure. I got the first volume of The Drifting Classroom, which is a classic horror manga about an elementary school that disappears one day and is transported to an unexplained wasteland where it's just drifting alone in the sands. All My Rage by Sabata here won the Young People's Literature National Book Award, so I will be reading that as part of that project. Reader, I Murdered Him is a Jane Eyre rewrite. I mean, it's on the cover. I think you get it. I'm looking forward to it. I'm a fan of Mr. Rochester, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy the hell out of a YA book that just destroys his whole life and career. Sometimes literally. Rust in the Root by Justina Ireland. I love Dread Nation and Deathless Divide. Justina Ireland's alternate history, Civil War, zombie apocalypse duology with a wonderful cast of queer characters, just absolutely engaging in every way. So I didn't even look at what this was about, I just bought it. Youngblood, it's gay vampire boarding school romance mystery. I mean, yeah, I'll probably read this in like 2 hours whenever I pick it up. The Bone Spindle, Sleeping Beauty's a prince, and you gotta go rescue him, but uh-oh, what if you fall in love with the other girl who's also trying to rescue him? What then? Anne of Greenville. It's a modernized rewrite of Anne of Green Gables that actually admits that Anne is queer and autistic. Very exciting. No, I haven't actually read Anne of Green Gables, but I've seen enough movie and television adaptations to be certain without a doubt that Anne is, in fact, an autistic lesbian. So I'm excited. I have the first volume of The Rose of Versailles, which is kind of a proto-Yuri manga as well as a foundational shoujo manga. And, you know, I just love manga that is set in Europe, particularly historical Europe, because I absolutely love to see Western expectations recontextualized and exoticized by Japanese writers. It's a peculiar delight for me. I'm looking forward to this a lot. The latest Junji Ito, which I'm sure I'll like because it's Junji Ito, and also, look at this cover design. This might be one of the best ever Junji Ito covers. The first in Molly Knox Ostertag's new comic book series for kids, Dungeon Club. It's D&D, and my favorite person did it, so I'm sure I will like it. Finale, Late Conversations with Stephen Sondheim. I am mourning the loss of the god that until recently walked among us. And so, like everybody else who is, I want to return to some of his words, and I am looking forward to this on a day when I feel like crying a lot. The Crane Wife by C.J. Hauser is an essay collection that has been getting a lot of buzz all year long, so I'm a little uncertain of what's actually going on with this, but everything I've heard has made me want to read it, so I will report back when I do. This is what I'm really looking forward to. It's Ducks by Kate Beaton. The subtitle is 2 Years in the Oil Sands. Kate Beaton is known for the charming webcomic Hark a Vagrant, and also wrote one of my favorite picture books, The Princess and the Pony. So this feels like a bit of a departure, but there's nothing Kate Beaton can write that I won't read, and it has gotten rave reviews, so I'm really looking forward to it. Alright, the cover's off this one because I'm reading it right now. It's Translating Myself and Others by Jhumpa Lahiri. I'm not the hugest fan of Jhumpa Lahiri's fiction. I mean, I respect her craft, but it just never grabbed me. It's not quite my thing. But I've heard great things about what she has to say about the thorny nature of translation and its possibilities and ambiguities. So I'm really interested in that subject, so I wanted to read this. Plus, I just read one of the books that I bought at the sale, which is Babel by R.F. Kuang, which I'm going to release a full review of soon because I cannot stop thinking about it. I really enjoyed it, but one of the things about this book is that its magic system relies on translation and is powered by what's lost in translation. So this seemed like a really good chaser to Babel. So that's why I'm in the middle of it. Let's take a breather, shall we? We're about halfway through this haul. I'm also halfway through Mademoiselle Revolution by Zoe Sivak. Or Sivak, I don't know. I don't know names. But this is about Sylvie, who is a mixed-race Haitian woman who is raised as a marriageable daughter on the plantation of her white father. She is freed and adopted into the family as an infant right after her enslaved mother dies giving birth to her, and is raised as among but not of the white family. So she both suffers under the system and benefits from slavery. So just as she's gaining her political consciousness, but before she can do anything about it, the Haitian Revolution hits. And she and a few of her family members escape Haiti because she has lived her whole life as more or less one of the masters on the plantation. So she's not safe. So they escape, and she and her brother go to Paris, where as her revolutionary consciousness grows and grows, she gets involved in the milieu of the new post-revolution republic and falls in love with Robespierre and his mistress. So this is like a historical war drama, like crashed into a Jane Austen novel. There's a lot of pretty dresses and flirtation and witty repartees, and also a lot of the gruesome horrors of history and the mechanics of oppression all at the same time. Babel gave me a real taste for revolution stories right now. That's just what I was in the mood for after finishing it. And I couldn't let that go, so I wanted another one. This is a little lighter than Babel, but I mean, it still deals with, of course, some epic parts of history and some really disturbing truths about history. So it's a little bit of everything. I'm finding it really delightful so far. I got When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill, who won a Newbery for The Girl Who Drank the Moon. This is kind of on the edge between speculative and literary fiction. In the past, I found Kelly Barnhill's writing to be really beautiful, and this has gotten great reviews. People I trust really want me to read it, so I'm looking forward to it. Haven by Emma Donoghue. I haven't read Donoghue yet, although several of her books have been on my TBR for years. But Haven sounds like a really harrowing story of isolation, and I like those on occasion. So I want to have this the next time I'm in the mood for one of those, which will probably be pretty soon. January and February are rough times for me. White Horse by Erica T. Worth. I've been looking forward to this one coming out. Horror by an Indigenous author, with a lot of really great advanced reviews. I mean, checks all the TBR boxes for me, so we'll see. I got Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. I like me an angry woman horror book. So, speaking of that, House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. This one's angry woman, gay vampire history. Vampires. Gay. Gothic. Gay. So, gay. Yeah. I know it's supposed to look like she's having a bad time, but I don't know. I kind of get good time vibes from this cover. Seven Empty Houses by Samantha Schweblin won the Literature and Translation National Book Award, so I'm going to be reading that for my project. I've been meaning to read her previous book anyway, so this will give me a taste of her writing and tell me whether I should go back and do that as well. The Rabbit Hutch by Tess Gunty won the National Book Award for fiction. I gotta be honest, I didn't really want to read this one. It got rave reviews from everyone who read it. No one could stop talking about it when it came out, and then it won a bunch of awards all at once. And honestly, I was sick of even thinking about this book, but I said I would for my project, and I did flip through the first few pages, and it actually is pretty intriguing, so I'm ready to be proven wrong. I will admit the cover's really good. I think part of my disappointment is that the synopsis isn't very good. But then again, synopses on literary novels rarely are, so we'll see how it goes. I got The Way Spring Arrives and Other Stories. This is a collection of Chinese speculative fiction in translation from female and non-binary creators. And R.F. Kuang is one of the translators on this, so I'm also going to be reading this soon as a follow-up to Babel, which, again, owns my whole mind and soul now. I got another Kiersten White book. This is one of her latest. Hide. It's amusement park, gamified slasher. Looks like a really good time. Also, check out those end papers. Can't beat that. I got the Becky Chambers Monk and Robot series, Psalm for the Wild Built, and Prayer for the Crown Shy. These have been recommended to me over and over and over. I found some I read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet for a book club, and I found it dragged a little bit for me. Is interesting, but I felt it was much longer than it needed to be, so I have pretty high hopes for these extremely short books. Honestly, most books over 200 pages don't need to be as long as they are. That's not to say I don't love a long book, but I think most books could be significantly shorter than they are. Even Babel, which comes in at 500 pages, I don't think that it could be shorter than 400 pages, but I think it could be 400 pages. Finally, I got this little guy, An Elderly Lady is Up to No Good, and Other Stories. I've heard that this is just delightfully wicked, and I think it'll make a fun little read. Plus, it's just a charming book to look at. Okay, so that's where we are now. And now that my book ban is broken, I did consider reinstating it with new rules after this, but I know when I'm defeated, there's a certain grace and surrender. At least I can read the other 2 books in the Darken trilogy now, though. So, thank you for joining me for this non-apology and book haul. Ollie, I will give it another try next year on the Read What You Own challenge. I'm sure I'll need it even more then than I do now. Thank you for joining me on Horror and Inconvenience. And remember, the lemon sees all. What did I just say?